Hello class, this is a video that is going to cover stage 2 of your project development and stage 2 of the course, which takes place from weeks 4 to week 7. So that's up until reading week basically. So from now until reading week you will be in stage 2 of your project and of the course, so this video will detail information about that. I've heard from students as I've been meeting with y'all, which has been great, honestly, to learn all about your different creative directions with this course. I've heard from many students that these videos are very helpful for them to clarify all the information in the course and on Blackboard. So that's great to hear. And that's why I make these videos, and I hope that you all watch them, and I hope that it does make things clear for you. But of course, you can always ask me questions after watching the video if anything is unclear, or if there's anything that I didn't cover, or anything like that. So, stage 2, as you know by this point, is the pre-production stage. You just completed the first stage of your projects and of the course, which was to develop a proposal for your project. I'm trying to get my thumb in there. Proposal for your project, as well as a timeline up to week 7, right? So you've already planned out, what is the project you're working on as a whole through the semester, and then what are your key tasks you plan to complete up until the end of stage 2, up until reading week. Now, when we come back from reading week, that will be the start of stage 3, and at that point, you will submit a timeline detailing how stage 3 is going to go, but don't worry about that yet. Yeah, I think that's how it's going to go. Unless that changes, I will let you know, but that's the plan. So here we are in stage 2. So stage 1, proposal, timeline. So you have a big idea of what you plan to be completing this semester, and you should have some idea of what work you're going to be doing these next handful of weeks. Pre-production work, as you know from your classes you've taken in the MMDD program, it's a lot of the kind of messier work in a lot of ways, right? It's really getting your ideas out onto paper. It can be sketches, low fidelity things, low fidelity wireframes, things that are planning out the production content that you plan to put together. Now, because this course is so open-ended, because the MMDD program is so vast, you're all working on very different things. So what one student's pre-production work might be could be different from another student, just depending on what their project is and what their goals are with their career path as well, right? So in that sense, it's hard for me to say, okay, everyone should do the exact same pre-production work, right? No, you as a project developer at this point, it's up to you to determine, okay, what is the most important pre-production work for me to do? And the whole point of this is to lay a strong creative foundation so that when you do get into the production stage, which is going to be when you open up, all your Adobe software and all of that stuff, you have a very strong guideline of your ideas to follow so that you can just really, move through it very logically, right? You might, at this point, typically, when you're going to work on a creative project, just immediately open all your Adobe things and just start making the final thing off the top of your head, right? But that's not the production workflow that I'm trying to encourage with this course, right? It's very, very important, as you've learned in many of your classes, to do the pre-production work, to really spend a lot of time getting your ideas out there, creating a strong foundation so that the production stage isn't a bunch of random confusion and hiccups and issues that you're facing, right? This is really to make sure the rest of your project moves smoothly. So the more effort and work and time you put into the pre-production stage, the easier later stages of your project will be, right? Imagine you make a very comprehensive, very helpful storyboard so that when you then make your motion graphics, you have something to follow. If you don't do that, then when you start making your motion graphics, you're just going to be trying to do things out of the top of your head, which maybe you think that's the greatest way you can do it, but I promise you it's very good for you to practice having a good creative plan that you follow, right, with your storyboards or sketches or whatever it is you plan to do. So as with any stage of this project and of this course, there is a lot of stuff on Blackboard to cover in terms of the pre-production work. So that's what I'm going to do next in this video. Let me just go into the corner here, and we're on the Blackboard course page. And you're going to see by the time that you can see this video that stage 2 pre-production weeks 4 through 7 will be available for you, right? Stage 1 was in this thing here, weeks 1 through 3, propose and plan, and then stage 2 is here, weeks 4 through 7. Now, I understand that stage 1, there was a lot of things to cover, right? So everything that you've done so far in the course is comprised in stage 1. So all of that course information, the course review quiz, putting together your plan and your proposal and everything. That was all part of stage one. I understand that might have seemed quite overwhelming for you, but it's very important to have all that information so that you get caught up to speed and that you know what to do to get moving on your projects. I'm hopeful that now that that's kind of behind us, the rest of the course should be a bit smoother, right? It shouldn't be quite as overwhelming with information because I'm not having to try and cover everything for you for the whole semester at once, right? So here we are in the stage 2 pre-production phase. The first thing you're going to see is a stage 1 feedback form, right? So we haven't left stage 1 quite yet, right? With it now completed, please provide anonymous feedback here on stage 1 of the course. This is because I also get the sense that stage 1, again, there was a lot of information coming from all kind of different directions. It might have seemed quite overwhelming for you. So again, in my transition of this course being online to in-person to back online, and I've done all kinds of different things over the years to try and improve it for students. One of the best ways for me to be able to do that is from getting feedback from you, right? So I really would appreciate if you open up this feedback form. There aren't that many questions, right? It's just kind of like how helpful was various things on Blackboard for your understanding of the course. How did you find the workload? And then just additional comments, right, on how that stage of the course could be improved or streamlined, but also any insights on how the course continuing can be improved as well for the rest of this semester. If there's anything I could do to change things to make it clearer for you or make the process more seamless, right? Again, many of you are user experience designers, right? So it's like, if you were to think about this as a user experience project where you were the user going through all of that stuff on Blackboard and the announcements and everything, how could that process be improved for future students, right? How could it be clearer? Was there some stuff that was unnecessary? Was there some stuff that was missing? Like, that's important for me to know, right? And so I want that user feedback from you so that I can, of course, continue to iterate and improve this process, right? It's not complete. It's always changing and adapting to student needs. So yeah, once you've completed that feedback form, then you can finally say stage 1 is over with. Next, you'll click and open the stage 2 overview, which you already would have clicked on to see this video, right? So I'll open that. The video that you're watching right now will be here where it says course video pending, but the overview for this stage, you've now reached stage 2 pre-production of your multimedia project. The goal of this stage is to turn your ideas into a tangible format, laying a solid foundation for the next phase, production. Right, so it really is about transitioning toward that production phase. Purpose of stage 2. This stage is all about brainstorming and organizing your ideas. You'll create sketches, mood boards, storyboards, scripts, wireframes, or whatever tools fit your individual project. Right, and so once again, everyone's working on different sorts of stuff. Some of you, of course, there is alignment. You're both doing UI UX or something like that, but even that, your goals might be a bit different. So if you're having trouble and you feel stuck, okay, what pre-production work should I do? This is very much an independent learning experience, this course and this project. And these days you do have a great tool with you with ChatGPT, right? So I do say here, if you're having trouble of what pre-production tasks or work to do, you can consider ideating ChatGPT with ChatGPT, right? It's a great new tool for you to have for independent learning. You could, of course, ask me, hey, what should I be working on at this point if you really are stuck? But, you can tell ChatGPT, hey, I have the project goal of making this grand thing, maybe it's some AR experience or who knows what. And I've done this work so far, but I'm kind of stuck on what other pre-production tasks should I do to make sure that I move forward on this project and complete it in time, right? So I think that that's an interesting idea for you to try out. And again, having back and forth conversation just to kind of even get a better sense of your own project. I think that's interesting, right? Again, as an independent learning tool, it's not about doing exactly what ChatGPT tells you, but just getting insight from it about, here's my specific project. What's some work that I could be doing right now to be moving forward on it if you find yourself stuck, right? Key takeaway, the more detailed and thorough your pre-production work is, the smoother your production stage will be. I've already said that, right? Instead of jumping directly into design software like Figma or After Effects, use this time to get your ideas onto paper or digital equivalents, right? If you want to do digital sketches and storyboards, that's fine. But this ensures you're working from a clear, developed, creative plan rather than just ideas in your head, right? I'm trying to get you away from the thought of, okay, I have this big project that I need to complete. Let me just open up After Effects and do it, right? That's not the process you should be following here. You are intended to really get those ideas out first and really have your creative plan foundation set, then get into After Effects and actually do that stuff. And you might say to me, oh, but I work best if I just open up After Effects. That's probably just because that's the habit you've developed, right? This is trying to develop new habits for you that ideally will help you much more in the long run, right? And if you, after this, say, I'm never doing pre-production work again, well, you will again in the next course you have with me, but then after that, you can see how it works out. Stage 2 breakdown. This stage is divided into 2 parts, each lasting 2 weeks. Okay, so there's kind of 2 parts to stage 2. Again, that might seem a bit confusing, but that's just to break up the submissions, right? So rather than it being 4 weeks and then you submit a whole grand big thing, I've split it up into 2 weeks at a time. And at the end of each of those 2-week periods, that's when you submit something. Okay, so stage 2, part 1, which is weeks 4 and 5, you'll complete the first half of your pre-production work. You should already be working on that, even by the time you watch this video. And you will also finish the Remote Work Foundations module. I'll provide some more details about that in this video. Stay tuned. And then for stage 2, part 2, weeks 6 and 7, you will complete the second half of your pre-production work, and you'll also participate in your first peer feedback assignment. So throughout this whole stage, you're supposed to be, working incrementally on your pre-production work, right? But at the same time, there are some aligned objectives and assignments that I have you completing, right? But the Remote Work Foundations and the peer feedback assignment, each of those shouldn't take more than like an hour, right? And if you're thinking about how this course, you should be spending at least like 3 to 6 hours a week working on these projects, that's still plenty of time for you to be doing your pre-production work. And make sure you're keeping track of that time too, of course, right? To be able to demonstrate the hours you're putting into this project. Each submission will also request the associated timesheets and an updated project timeline. So make sure to track your coursework time and check off tasks on your project timeline as you complete them. The whole reason why I have that project timeline template thing in Google Docs is because you can kind of make it be a checkbox. So what you should be doing at each stage, each time you submit your project work, is number 1, submitting a timesheet of the hours that you did for that submission, right, for those 2 weeks of work. And you'll also resubmit your project timeline, but it'll be updated and it'll have tasks checked off. And if you need to move some things around, add new tasks, you can always be adapting your timeline and your plan to that as well, right? But you're going to need to be updating it with each submission. Use this time to explore all of your creative ideas so that by the time you reach the production stage, everything is clearly laid out and ready for development. That's, again, what this stage is all about. So that's the overview, right? And you're going to see here there's folders for each of these parts of stage 2. So stage 2, part 1, stage 2, part 2. If I first open part 1, you're going to see a link here to your Remote Work Foundations module. This might already be available for you on Blackboard in the back end. But anyway, complete this online learning module during stage 2, part 1 of your project, and include your certificate of completion in your stage 2, part 1 submission. Okay, so what's important about each of these parts of the stage is there's one submission for each of them, right? So this is due October 4th, and then part 2 is due October 18th, okay? That's, each of those is to culminate 2 weeks worth of work. So between weeks 4 and 5, you need to be completing this module on Remote Work Foundations. Now, in the critical path, initially I had this module due at the end of week 4, and I had the peer feedback due at the end of week 6. But I realized that that would mean that you're having to submit stuff at the end of every week, and I know that that can get kind of arduous for you. So instead, I have made them larger submissions bi-weekly. Now, the problem with that, or the issue that can come from that, is if students, for whatever grand reasons could possibly happen, don't complete this foundation module ahead of time, and then suddenly they see the due dates coming and they're like, oh, I need to complete that really quickly, right? No, you should be doing this well ahead of time. So even though I've moved the due date technically to be a week later in week 5, I still recommend that you complete it in week 4, right? Just so you can get it taken care of. And if you click on it, it's like embedded directly in Blackboard, which is interesting. It's a LinkedIn learning module, and it goes through just important practices for professional remote work. Now, would this have made sense for you to complete it in the first stage of the project? Possibly, but I didn't want to overload you with this on top of everything else, right? So I do encourage you to complete it sooner rather than later, because it's going to give you valuable insights and skills and tips. And It takes, I think, about an hour to go through all of this content, and there's like a quiz, I think, at the end, and you get a certificate at the end. Okay. And as long as this is connected to your LinkedIn profile, you should now then have the credential of Remote Work Foundations on your LinkedIn profile, right? So this is also for me to help you, develop credentials on your professional social network so that, once again, if you're interested in getting remote work, someone can go to your page and see that you've completed this course. Okay, well, they must know something about good practices for remote work. Right, so this is a professional credential for you to have, but it's baked into the requirements of this course. And like I said, I think it'll take about 1 to 2 hours maybe to complete that. And you'll get a certificate, so take a screenshot or PDF or something of that certificate, because when you then submit it here, right, Stage 2 Part 1 submission requests that you submit a timesheet of the work you completed during this stage, during this part. Okay, now this should be basically using the template you made of your first timesheet, but you don't have to keep the old hours and tasks on there. You'll notice that there's a running total of your total hours on that timesheet. So you'll update it with the new tasks that you completed at this part of the project, but then you will have that running total also updated. Okay, so you got to keep track of that. But this isn't meant to have all the tasks you completed in stage 1 and then adding on all your hours, right? It's not going to be this huge, giant hourly document. You're meant to kind of refresh it with each stage, but keeping that running total updated at the same time. Yes, that requires math, but I believe that you can do it. Also, your updated project timeline. This is kind of, oddly enough, the main issue I've seen so far in student stage 1 submissions is just not detailing their tasks in their project timeline. But hopefully by this point you have your tasks detailed there. And yes, with each of these parts that you submit, you're going to go through it. So weeks 4 and 5 in your timeline, check off the tasks that you completed, add any new tasks that you did, move things around if you need to, and then submit the updated PDF here. Okay, that just shows that you're keeping track of your progress on your timeline that you made. I also understand that timesheet and timeline, they sound too similar. I need to change the name of one of them. I think this semester is probably too late to do that. That might cause more confusion if I change the name of one of them. Next time I'll probably change the name of it though. One of them, I don't know. Then this is a new template here, examples of pre-production work. Very bare bones. You definitely are encouraged to spice it up. But this is just a bare bones template of a sort of PDF presentation. Stage X, Part X project work, right? So this would be Stage 2, Part 1 project work, your name. Work task, right? What is the work task that you put in your timesheet? Okay, creating sketches for my first animation. Okay, put some screenshots, show those sketches here. Your next work task, okay, I researched and watched YouTube tutorials on how to do this thing. Okay, put a link there, right? So doesn't have to be super elaborate, but it's literally just kind of okay, I did this task and here's proof that I did this task, right? And then I'm going to see that in your timesheet you said that thing took, if you say, sketches for my logo, it took me 10 hours, and then you say here logo sketches and it's just like one sketch, I might start to think, okay, that doesn't seem accurate, right? So this is also meant to just demonstrate and prove the time you've been spending on your project, okay? So keep that in mind. But it doesn't have to be the most comprehensive, super, like kind of, it should be straightforward and succinct, get the idea across, just demonstrating the work you've been doing so far. And then you'll also, so you'll have a PDF export of that, and then the certificate from your remote work foundations that you should have completed, right? Image, screenshot, or PDF. Just attach that along with everything else. Your work items, your invite, your time sheet. It says invoice here. That's what it used to be called. Your time sheet should reflect the following tasks. Pre-production work, specify the tasks you completed. Your remote work foundations module, right? That'll take you an hour or two. And then if you had your supervisor meeting during this stage, you can add that there. Otherwise, you don't have to put that. But I know some students would have been meeting with me actually in this stage rather than the last one. But anyways, something to keep in mind. Of course, if it's late, submit a late waiver. Please include a professional message and any specific feedback requests, right? So again, I'm kind of just going through these submissions, making sure that you're on track. But if you want any specific feedback from me saying, hey, what do you think about this logo? Then I will happily provide it for you. Submit PDFs with direct attachments, and it must include all requested deliverables to receive credit. You can also access the course reference page for clarification on anything mentioned here, but hopefully it's pretty straightforward for you. And that should cover that part of the submission. Okay, so that's stage 2 part 1, right? So I encourage you in week 5 to do your remote work foundations module, and then just continue working on your pre-production work and submit it here. You'll notice, right, many of you unfortunately were hit with this snag, this trick in your stage 1 submissions, but yes, these are not due at midnight, right? They're due at 11 o'clock p.m. There was a question in your course review quiz that actually specified that, to try and make sure that was kind of drilled in, but I understand that maybe it didn't stick. But yes, these submissions are due at 11 p.m. So if it's after that, then it's late, right? And that's to kind of get you to submit these things before the weekend. And then if you wanted to work over the weekend on this project, you can work on your upcoming stage, right? Rather than it being all of the pressing work that's due. That's to try and, again, instill good professional habits in you. And then part 2, week 6 or 7. Here, you're going to complete your first peer feedback activity and then also continue with your pre-production work. And here's guidelines for the peer feedback activity. You are required to meet with your assigned remote team during weeks 6 and 7 of your project, stage 2, part 2, to discuss and share your project work. And by this point, you should have, pre-production work that you've already submitted, right, that you can already show even in a presentation format. Isn't that great? Follow these guidelines to ensure a successful meeting. First, schedule the meeting. This is one of the challenges of this. You have to schedule a meeting with your team. Coordinate with your remote team members to set a meeting time and platform, online or in person. Okay, guys, are we all going to meet, on WhatsApp at this time? Are we going to meet on campus after this class, right? Get that figured out with your team. Since all team members share the same course schedule, in terms of at least this class, consider scheduling the meeting time during that time for convenience. So, everyone in your team should either have designated time in their schedule for this course on Monday morning or Monday afternoon. So depending on what section that is, you should know that you're all available at that time, and then you can schedule the meeting then. Now, it shouldn't have to be that one person is the one who actually is on top of things and is having to get everyone else corralled to meet. You should all be putting in the effort to connect with one another, okay? So that you can, because you're all on the hook for this. You all have to meet with each other. So putting it all on one person or a couple people who actually are putting in the effort, that doesn't bode well for you. So please connect with one another. You already would have connected in the supervisor meetings that you had with me, right? I kind of forced y'all to ideally talk with one another in those online meetings, so you at least know that each other exists, okay? And maybe you have other classes with each other, right? Prepare for peer feedback. So once you have it scheduled, then use the provided peer feedback form to structure your discussion and feedback. This is not overly complicated. It's pretty broad, actually. So this is a form for you to use to fill out and collect peer feedback. First, you'll put your name. What remote team are you in? Is it like 1A? Is it 5B? The peers' names you're meeting with, just to make sure you know their names. The date of your meeting. Okay. Step 1, sharing work. First, share your project work with your team and get them up to speed, right? Say, hey, okay, so for this project, I'm creating, a prototype of this redesign of this app. And so here's my low fidelity wireframe so far. Do you feel like I'm meeting my project goals or I'm on the right track, right? Communicate your project goals with your team and what you hope to get out of this project with examples of your work showing how far along you are, okay? And then step 2 is gathering feedback, okay? So after you've shown your work, ask your peers, okay, what aspects of my project work did you find most effective or impressive, right? What were some of the highlights? What areas could be improved or refined? Everyone's going to have areas that need to be improved or refined. How well does my work meet the objectives and goals of the project? Does it seem like I'm in line with those goals, or am I sort of, navigating away from them? And do you have any specific suggestions or ideas to help enhance my project as I continue working on it, right? Maybe that's covered in some of these other bullet points, but you should be getting, ideally, valuable feedback you can take with you to then, help guide some of your future work, right? And then step 3, this is important, is proof. Include a picture, a selfie, or a screenshot showing you and your peers meeting. So yes, to prove you actually met with one another. If it's in person, you can take a selfie. If it's online, you can take a screenshot of the online room that you met in, right? With your cameras on to show that the people are actually there, to prove that the meeting happened. I know that might seem kind of crazy, but it's literally because the importance of this assignment is for you to be having the initiative to connect with one another to actually meet. I know that some of you probably hate group work. You probably hate doing things like this. It is a part of most likely what you're going to be doing in your career, right? So trying to develop those skills are very important. And again, this is a remote work simulation class, and even in that situation, you very well might have other remote workers that you're connected with, right? So having these peer feedback week meetings is a way to touch base with your fellow colleagues, right? Document your meeting. Like I said, take a photo, and you'll include that in the form. And then you'll submit it with your stage 2 part 2 submission. And each team member must submit their own, okay? Because it's going to be you are keeping track of the feedback you're receiving. This isn't, hey, I'm going to send you this document, you fill it out with what you think about my project. No, it's meant to be you're having a conversation with your peers, and they are providing feedback on your project, and you're taking note of it, okay? And you don't have to say, okay, John said this, Kate said this, unless you want to, but just in general, bullet points of whatever feedback you're receiving to make sure it's being recorded. Additionally, record the meeting details in your timesheet, including the duration of the meeting, probably at least like an hour or so, if not a little more. So you'll want to say, yes, we spent an hour for peer feedback. And you can put that in your timesheet. Tip, use these peer feedback sessions as a chance to strengthen professional relationships with your colleagues, right? Again, these are the people that you already know, ideally, or you have some connection to from being in this program together. And they're going to be very important for you to still have once you graduate. Now, if you are not very accommodating in this peer feedback situation, if you are not responding to messages from your team, if you aren't showing up to meetings, that sets a bad precedent, right? That does not that harms your professional relationship. That tells your peers, hey, you know what? This person doesn't seem like they would actually be that great to work with in the future. That's not a good situation to be in. So I really do encourage you to use this as an opportunity to build positive professional relationships with one another. And if you do fail to meet with your team, you will still need to gather feedback from them at a later time and use a late waiver in your submission if it's past the deadline, okay? But really, please just, ideally, every team should be setting a meeting and everyone goes there. I understand emergency situations might come up. Communicate that with your teammates, right? Keep it professional. Don't just not show up, right? Or just never respond to messages from anyone. So make sure you're getting connected with one another, okay? And then, yes, so your part 2 submission is very similar to the part 1. You'll have a timesheet detailing these tasks that you did. Oh, right, I even just copy and pasted it, so it's right there. Stage 2 part 2 timesheet, right? So what are the tasks you did and how long did it take you for stage 2 part 2? An updated project timeline again, right? Now checking off weeks 6 and 7 of what you were up to, and then examples of pre-production work. There's a template again if you want to use that template, but you should, kind of have your own you're developing as well to show your work. And then your peer feedback notes, right? And here's another link to that form for you to download and fill out on your own. Right, and then the work items on your timesheet, pre-production work, specify your tasks, and then your remote teams meeting. And then the same other information I've already gone over. So, like I said, this is the next 4 weeks of the course. It's happening in 2 chunks. With each of those chunks, there's your general pre-production work that you're doing on your own, as well as specific objectives I'm having for you. That being the Remote Work Foundations module, as well as the peer feedback activity. Okay? So, like I said, I think that now with everything, again, talking about, setting a foundation, I think with everything set in the foundation of stage 1 of the course, at this point I would have met with most all of you. So things should be clear now in terms of how the course is going. And this is now giving you a sense of what's happening in the next 4 weeks. Believe it or not, stage 1, that was only the first 3 weeks of the semester, right? So this is actually a longer stage, right? There's a lot more kind of open time, right, for you to be using to work in your projects. And, because you're proposing projects that are intended to be exciting for you, they should really be starting to get your creativity going. And, hopefully as you're working even on the pre-production work, you might notice that, time's just passing and you're not even noticing it that much, right? Other than to keep track of it on your timesheet. But, when you get in that creative zone, it's really wonderful to feel like, You're not even noticing time pass because you're so focused. Hopefully you can get a bit of that invigoration at this stage of the project, because the whole point is this shouldn't, feel like, I'm here whipping you, forcing you to do some sort of project. This is a project you are creating. So I'm really hoping that in this process you are feeling creatively invigorated, and you're enjoying this process. Okay. And this video, again, it covers now that whole second stage of the course and of your project. And if you have any questions, like I said, please reach out to me via Blackboard Messenger, and I will also be sending out announcements each week to just kind of clarify, hey, you should be doing this week, just make sure you're still on track. And again, when the course becomes a bit more open-ended, it can become much more difficult for students to manage their time. Also, guess what? You have like 8 other classes or something. And a lot of those classes, you also have a bunch of projects you're working on. So it's very easy for students to fall behind. That's why time management is so important, okay? And so especially be using your Mondays to be working on this class, right? You have that dedicated time in your schedule for this class on Mondays. Really encourage you to be using that for this class. And just making sure that you stay on top of things. That's what's most important. And that you aren't just waiting until, okay, stage 2, part 1 is due in 30 minutes. Let me just do all my project work now. That's not a very good pattern for you to put yourself in. So I do not encourage you to do that. And guess what? You're not going to be able to do it all in 30 minutes, okay? Even if you think challenge accepted, I don't recommend you accepting that challenge. So be working on this stuff incrementally. Again, those 2 big lump submissions, stage 2, part 1, stage 2, part 2. But in the meantime, of course, you can reach out to me, Blackboard Messenger, with any questions. Thank you for watching this video, and best of luck. And once again, I really hope you start to feel that creative force behind you as you start putting this work together.